Hey everyone, my name is Matt Cromwell and I'm with WordPress.com, and today we are going to talk about the state of publishing in WordPress. And I have some guests with me today that are excellent, and they each represent different platforms that write about WordPress in different ways. We're excited to talk about this subject. That basically the whole idea is that over the last few years there's been a real big surge of writing and publishing about WordPress in general that is noticeable to anybody who's been working with WordPress for a long time. And we wanted to talk about kind of the state of publishing about WordPress, basically. Within the field of WordPress Business or WordPress Development, open source, and all of its advancement, these things are really important subjects and concepts, and they don't seem to be treated sometimes with the heft that you might see in major tech blogs or business journals or entrepreneurial sites necessarily. So we want to talk a little bit about the work that each of our guests do in serving that space, and then talk a little bit more broadly about that space and the general direction of publishing in WordPress in general. So first, Marie Dodson, would you introduce yourself?
Sure. So my name is Marie Dodson. I'm the editor at Torque magazine. We're a WordPress publication. We publish everything from, tutorials on, how to install a plugin, to how to build a plugin, to how to work with the REST API. And we also publish a lot of content from various contributors around the community. I work with and manage a team of writers, as well as several contributors, and I write when I can.
Awesome. Brian, would you introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hey, I'm Brian Krogsgaard, and I'm the editor of PostStatus, poststatus.com. It's a news and information site for WordPress professionals. I definitely gear pretty strictly towards people that make their living with WordPress or use WordPress as a primary tool within their organization and are pretty familiar overall with the ecosystem. So I don't do as much like tutorial type of stuff. Instead, I do a lot of writing around things that I think will affect people's careers, business, or will otherwise help provide them information to be better at what they're doing within and around the WordPress community. Been doing it full time for coming on 2 years now, and I've been writing about WordPress in some way or another since about 2010, and PostStatus itself launched in January 2013, I think. So it's been around a few years now, which is weird to think of. It's gone fast. But yeah, that's what I do. Been doing it full time, and it's, I guess, worth noting that it's most of the content is behind a paywall. It's a membership website, so there's a little over 700 members, I think, right now that are active. And yeah, so it's I call it a trade magazine when I talk to normal humans. So yeah, that's what I do.
Normal humans. I'm a WordPresser, not a normal human. That sounds like a t-shirt.
Yeah.
Nathan, you're up.
Cool. Yes, my name's Nathan Weller. I'm the content manager for Elegant Themes, and sort of like under that umbrella includes just sort of heading up our blog. So that includes managing the writers and editorial duties of the blog, our YouTube channel, which we've started to do quite a few videos. We're hoping to get to daily videos soon. We have our social channels, and a lot of the video work and stuff like that goes heavily into our Facebook as well. And we're just starting to branch out into more live stuff. Like we want to plan some webinars and things like that, as well as event outreach. So all of that kind of falls under content for us, including things like events. So we've talked about within our community, I don't know how well known it is outside of that, but we're hoping in the near future to also launch a conference around our flagship product, Divi. And so that'll be something that I'm involved heavily in. So yeah, under all that kind of falls under the content manager role. It's a lot of hats, so I tend to jump around a lot. Again, sort of like Marie, I write when I can. I wish I could write more because there's so many topics out there that I'm constantly seeing come up that I want to write about. I've been writing about WordPress in one form or another professionally, full-time, since late 2010, early 2011, back when I don't know, for those of you who've been in the WordPress blogosphere for a while, remember WP Mods, which was run by Kevin Muldoon back in the day. I was one of his staff writers, and that kind of got me my start in the WordPress space. Before that, I was still blogging, but I was blogging about web design, art, and stuff that's sort of tangentially associated with WordPress, but not always together. So
nice. Cool. Thanks, guys. So this next question, basically, I wanted to see if you could describe briefly how your publication serves and enhance the WordPress project and the community in general. This is basically, it's obvious that a lot of people who are writing about WordPress nowadays, they've caught on to the fact that you can just put the word WordPress in a blog post title and it will start to generate traffic in one way or another. But that doesn't always necessarily mean it's beneficial or helpful. And so, but your publishing platforms, your blogging platforms, and websites enhance WordPress itself in different ways. Each of you have different purposes and different niches that you cater to and audiences that you write to specifically. So can you just describe a little bit about how you help WordPress in general and the WordPress community in general? Let's start with Marie.
Yeah, so, Torque is first and foremost an educational resource for the community. So, we do things like, the plugin train. So, by providing recommendations on different features and stuff. We also do things for developers who are just starting out. So, if you want to learn how to put your first WordPress plugin together, we have information on that as well. And then, what also falls underneath that umbrella is, topics relating to news. So, that's a subset of things that we do. So if it's something that's going to be relevant to the WordPress community, it's obviously something that we want to cover and report on. So just, informing people on, trends in the industry, informing them how to better leverage WordPress, how to, install plugins, how to, anything that you could think of. So really our audience is, WordPress users of all skill level, from the beginners all the way to the advanced developers.
Nice. Can you talk a little bit specifically about your relationship with WP Engine?
Sure. Yeah, so Torque is a WP Engine publication. So, I'm very much a WP Engine employee, but, they are totally separate in terms of, the editorial aspect of things. So, occasionally someone from the company they'll come and pitch me something, like as all companies do. So give you an example of that. One of our employees was, pitching something about PHP 7 because we know we're doing something around that as a company. And, it was very much centered towards WP Engine. So I was like, I told him that it's a great topic. We obviously want to, write about that. It's a huge thing, but, you have to make it non-specific to WP Engine. So, it can be challenging since it is a WP Engine publication, but, we really just, go by a strict set of criteria and make it, relevant to the entire WordPress community and beneficial for everyone, regardless of, which hosting platform they're using. So
nice. Cool. Yeah.
Brian. I really try to focus on topics that can have an impact on the direction of the project itself, or third-party projects that are significant within the WordPress space. I like to picture an audience whenever I'm trying to decide what I'm writing about, and I like to picture the person that either owns their own web development firm, or that runs their own product, or is a core developer. Those types of personas, if you will, and act like I'm writing this particular post to them to tell them what they would want to know. And one of the things that I do that's probably a little different than kind of the direction that other people go. I mean, this kind of separates into multiple trajectories. There's more traditional newsy type of places like WP Tavern and Torque that if they're going to have an opinion, they're probably going to label it an opinion. And then for the most part, just kind of stick to the primary newsworthiness of something. And then you have corporate blogs, which are usually writing in a marketing sense. I'm somewhere in between because I write a lot of news stuff, but it's going to be difficult to find a piece of news that I write that doesn't also have my opinion in it. So I'm pretty out front with what I think someone's takeaway should be. So I think what I really try to provide is not just to say to someone, hey, this is a thing that happened, but hey, this is a thing that happened, and this is what I think you should take away from it, to try to save them some time from having to come up with those thoughts themselves, which a lot of times requires more research than just whatever topic that you're talking about. So that's my goal when I'm writing.
Nice. Nathan.
Yeah, so at Elegant Themes, as is the case with everybody here, our community is really only a subset of the overall WordPress community. The audience that we tend to write for and that visit our blog regularly are the three primary groups are WordPress beginners, DIY business owners, and WordPress web designers. And all three of those heavily overlap with our own customer base and ideal customers. So as Brian was just mentioning, we are, I guess, technically a corporate blog. And so while we do our best to serve these people with a lot of free stuff, we do also heavily target our content towards our ideal customers, because once we have them on the site, obviously, we want them to associate us with the most useful resource for WordPress for them. So we try to serve that portion of the WordPress community by discovering basically what is their biggest and most painful WordPress and web design related problems, and then offering them free, extremely easy to understand solutions that they can implement immediately if possible, and ideally without having to purchase anything. But sometimes that's unavoidable. But that is kind of the prioritizing of it, because we found that kind of stuff gets people really excited when they're having a problem, and in the moment they can click on something and get immediate satisfaction for that problem, and it came from somebody for free. They really love that, and that's what we try to focus on for our ideal audience.
Cool. So yeah, I mean, clearly each of your publications there's a lot of overlap in the audiences in some ways, but your approach is different, each one of you, and you come from different perspectives. Like Torque, for example, is owned by WP Engine, but you made sure to maintain that independence. Whereas Nathan, your content is really for the purpose of enhancing your brand, and you do that though through giving good free resources to your user base. And that's pretty much our approach as well. We're a premium plugin shop, and we want to write about WordPress as much as possible so that people who stumble across our stuff see that we're knowledgeable about the space, that we're experienced, that we know what we're talking about, and that if we can benefit them so that they can use our stuff better or use any stuff in WordPress better, then that's great. And then Brian, you're writing specifically to WordPress professionals, as you mentioned, and I like the way you talked about it's not totally possible to write without your opinion being embedded right in it. Can you just elaborate that just one more time really quickly, what you're talking about right there?
Yeah, I mean, people pay me to tell them what I think about things. So it's to inform them about what's going on in the community, but it's also sometimes like if you just take something, I mean, we have issues like every community, but like something happens and then that has some degree of conversation around it. Most people don't have the time to read the various blog posts about it, and then to read the comments on those blog posts, and then to read the Facebook posts and the tweets and whatever else, and then make their own fully formed opinion. Instead, I try to encourage people to trust that I did those things, and then I tell them, this is my takeaway, this is what out of this deal, this is what's bad out of this deal. And it just depends on the topic as to what that means. But it could be a debate around a new feature going into WordPress. It could be around an acquisition. It could be around a product launch where someone's entering a crowded space. It could be all sorts of things. So yeah, I don't really create a dividing line between he said, she said type of news delivery and editorial. So pretty much anything you get, it's editorial with information. So that's what I try to do at least.
Nice. Yeah. So
And
in many ways,
just as a note, I think Nathan said something really interesting because he was talking about who his audience was in terms of kind of end users, and none of my stuff would make sense in that regard. Like, I'm not focusing on that person. My audience is like the three of y'all who are well into this space. Like, y'all are the type of people that I want as customers, not the person that's installing WordPress for the first time. If they were one of my readers, it would just not work.
Yeah.
It wouldn't work well at all.
For sure. But I think where I see the overlap is that you're providing value to WordPress professionals. And if they can say, oh, I learned about that subject on Post Status, then they feel like they have benefited, and what they're paying to be part of the Post Status community makes sense to them, that they see the value. And so you're writing specifically to them in order to, provide that value that makes it valuable to them, and so that they stay with you and hopefully recommend other people to join it as well. So,
yeah.
Cool. So next, what are some of the biggest challenges you guys face as a publisher? I'm using the word publisher because we're not necessarily, a lot of people have different opinions about whether to call it a blog or a news source or whatever, but I'm just using the word publisher. So what are some of the biggest challenges you face as a publisher? Let's start with Nathan.
Bandwidth. If there were like 10 more of me and 10 more of every other person we have working on the blog, that would be ideal, but we kind of have to work with what we have. And I say that knowing full well that we probably have a larger staff than a lot of people in the space. But there's just always so much to cover, and there's so many angles to take, and there's so many useful resources. I mean, I think this is sort of par for the course for anyone whose job entails strategic planning, because you have these sessions where you come up with 100 good ideas, and then it's going to take you like a year to year and a half to actually execute all of them. And by the time you're done executing all those, you've come up with another 300 ideas that you're just chomping at the bit to get to. And I think that's a huge part of the challenge that I face is, because not only are they ideas on our part, but we just don't pull our ideas or the things that we want to do out of thin air. A lot of it is based on conversations we're having with our audience. And we consistently get requests for things, or we discover pain points that really deserve the best possible take that we can give it to give something back to our community. And it's just not always possible to do right when it's most useful or most needed. And I think for me, with what we're trying to do, bandwidth is probably the biggest one. And that will tie in later to another answer I have about where I think the space as a whole could improve, but we'll get to that then.
Yeah. How many people do you actually have on your content team?
Well, we have 2 people full-time. So myself and a new content creator we hired on this year named Augustine Mack. A couple of people on our staff in the support developer, and then also Nick, our CEO, will jump in as needed or do some specific stuff. Our lead designer will sometimes step in and create some elements. But outside of specific marketing campaigns, that's pretty rare. Aside from that, though, we have, I think, 16 or 17 freelancers working on the blog right now. So.
Nice. Brian, what's your biggest challenge?
I'm trying to get over that number that I just heard, 16 or 17 contributors. That's amazing. Yeah, bandwidth is a big one, but I think I'll go with marketing. Because for me, it's a balance of writing free content versus members-only content. And everything that I write for free is, to a degree, a disincentive for someone that hasn't joined yet to continue to not be a member. Whereas everything that I put behind a paywall is great for members, but it's not getting the marketing out there. So I rely fully on people recommending Post Status to other people. So we're already a really small audience, overall number of people that really care about what we're doing. So my potential audience is small, and then I can only capture a certain percentage of that. So I really rely on current members recommending it to other members. That's the biggest thing. The second biggest would be bandwidth, because I'm one with I have 3 contractors that do some degree of work with me every month. But anything that's writing is really going to be me. David Bissett helps me curate some stuff. So I link out some stuff that are less editorialized. It's more just kind of like read this type of content. And he helps me with that. And then I have an administrative assistant, and I have that's Katie Richards. And then Daniel Espinoza is a e-commerce guy that I have on a retainer to help me with some of the site features that I've built out, because for some reason Post Status has become a pretty complicated website. So Daniel and I both do web development for the site. So just managing all those things becomes a pretty big task. So if I have days that are stuck in the weeds, then I'm not writing. And if I'm not writing, then I'm not sending emails. If I'm not sending emails, then members aren't hearing from me. So I need members to hear from me.
Yeah. I was just struck by an analogy that what you were saying about deciding between the free and the pro content. I mean, we do that the same with plugin features or with whole plugins in the freemium model. So there's basically, I mean, there's lots of different ways you could think about it, but like we've often thought about, like, you can go the WooCommerce route, which is what we did with Give, which is like make a free product that is big and full featured and really does basically a lot of what you need. Or you can, have a really pared down free thing that's basically almost like a teaser into the pro stuff. I mean, how do you balance that question between your free and your pro stuff? Like, is that similar? Is that a similar tension that you have in your mind?
I don't know if I'd call it a tension. I'm pretty okay with it these days that I like to give members my best stuff. Also, the more in the weeds it is and the less globally interesting that it is, the more likely I am to put it in members-only content. So like when Theme Forest did author-driven pricing announcements a couple of weeks ago, I wrote like 1,500 words about the nitty-gritty of what that means. And it was members only. And when GoDaddy acquired Managed WP, I got a scoop on that, and I published it publicly because that's more general knowledge information. And, I still have readers. So if I get a scoop like that, put it in the members only newsletter, then people just start tweeting about the fact that it happened, and everybody's like, hey, where's that piece of content? And if I didn't put it out there, then it's opportunity cost.
Nice. Marie,
I was just gonna, in response to, what Brian was saying before about, marketing and, that kind of struggle that he has. I think that, those really like long form pieces that you put out, I think that in itself is almost marketing, because there have been times when, I've read them and I'm like, wow, like I would want this delivered to me, like the Managed WP piece, just for example. I feel like, it kind of serves that marketing purpose in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it does. It does okay. I have an interesting, but not too important for this, but for some reason, around when I launched the membership component, Google started hating me. So if you look at a graph, like I had pretty normal search engine increases, and then you look at a graph and like 90% of my search traffic went away and then stayed away. So I have some pretty good evergreen content that Google doesn't care about anyway. So it makes it even less of an incentive to do something public, because I get the short-term benefits. Like I could get maybe 10,000 people or whatever go read it in the first few days, but then like after that it just falls off a cliff because Google doesn't like it very much. So that's a pretty big disincentive.
Yeah, no,
but
totally.
But yeah, I totally use the free content, especially the podcast, but because that's kind of hard to lock down. Plus, I think it's good marketing, but also long form stuff. I try to be the lead into the members only content.
Nice. Marie, what's your biggest challenge?
So, obviously, what Nathan said with the bandwidth is a huge thing, but, I'm going to go with, the different time zones and the struggles of being on a distributed team. So, the Torque team is 3 people, and, two of them are in San Francisco and I'm in New York. So, there's the 3-hour time difference there, which is fine. I can, manage in the mornings. But I do find myself working until 9 o'clock at night then. And then, there's working with all of our different contributors. So, we've had more than like 50 contributors on Torque since its launch, and we have 10 regular contributors now, and then guest posts along the way. And it's really challenging, to work and collaborate with people when you're on different time zones. Like it is such a challenge. And, even 3 hours, you think it doesn't make much of a difference, but it does when you collaborate with those people all day. And, they may need something from you at like, 5 o'clock their time. It's 8 o'clock here. It's a challenge for sure.
You're ready for dinner.
Yeah, right? I'm eating dinner. They're calling me.
You guys use Slack?
Yeah, we do. And we also use HipChat. That's the WP Engine company thing. So we have our own Torque room and stuff on that. And then
you guys use Slack too?
Yeah, we use Slack, and we just opened a channel up for all of our contractors to use Slack as well. We're still working the kinks out of that process, but it's been nice having one place where instead of sending out, bulk emails, I can just put an announcement in the Slack channel and make sure everybody sees it, which is great. That's huge.
Yep.
Yeah, Nathan, you said you had a lot of, a lot of different contributors. Are they all on different time zones? Are you all in one location? Do you have the similar struggles there?
Yeah, we have a lot of the exact same struggles that you're talking about. I mean, we have contributors all over the place, and then our company itself is all over the world. So like our home office, we're a 40-person company with 3 people in the home office, and everybody else in the company is all over the world. So we have someone in just about every time zone you could name.
Where's the home office?
Very spread out. San Francisco. So I'm in Ohio, and then they're in San Francisco. So I'm 3 hours ahead of them. And so a lot of times just that is challenging, particularly when you're doing, your high end or your top level strategy and stuff for everybody, to make sure those conversations are happening when they need to, and you're getting the feedback when you need to get it. And that makes it doubly hard when, your other full-time staff member and content is 6 hours ahead of you in the UK. So I feel you, Marie. I think that's another huge challenge. But tools like Slack go a very, very long way towards alleviating that pain for us.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Brian. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say, I don't know if y'all remember when Slack came out with the do not disturb mode, but it might have been the best day of my life in the last year and a half.
Yes.
Totally. Absolutely. Brian, since we're on the subject of Slack, can you talk a little bit about your Slack community? Because I think that's one thing that you do that's a bit unique from what the rest of us do.
Yeah, so I would say the Slack channel for Post Status is probably a bigger amount of time commitment than writing at this point, because every customer has access to Slack, and it's got, I don't know, a dozen active channels, plus there's like event channels and stuff. And so there's 700 people in there that can ping me at any hour. So I can tell you when Australia wakes up, and when Asia wakes up, and when Europe wakes up. And so when Do Not Disturb came along, I was pretty happy because I used to have to put my phone in like the moon mode or whatever, so that it wouldn't ping me at 2 a.m. So yeah, there's a lot of conversation, community management stuff that goes on there around specific channels for e-commerce or business or whatever. And it's a lot of fun. One of my goals is to figure out how to better keep myself away from it. And also, like, even if it's just a tiny percentage, like, I don't know, 1% of my customers per day that ping me, that still ends up being hours of conversation per day, where they're just assuming that I'll be able to respond back. So I have to be better about saying no, or like I have to create a little Brian bot or something that replies to them and says, "Hey, thanks for this. I'll get back to you when I can. I don't know. I'm doing something else," Nice. But it's a lot of fun. It's been a great feature that's been super popular, and it was honestly an afterthought when I launched. So it goes to tell you, a lot of times what becomes popular within a publication is not at all what you anticipate.
For sure. It's actually a really good question. I'd love to hear from Nathan and Marie. Just what do you guys do to kind of generate loyalty with your readers? Or do you have any kind of, I know actually, Nathan, you have a couple different Divi Facebook groups. but that's just around Divi, not your whole product line. But I'd love to hear what you guys do in general to generate loyalty with your readers.
Well, yeah, the Facebook groups are huge. I should mention that we didn't start any of them. I mean, they're all community generated. So
Right. Yep.
these Facebook groups, and some of them are huge. I mean, they're all in the thousands. One of them is, I think, over 16,000 now, or 15,000 range. It's pretty big. I think it's the second largest Facebook group for WordPress, at least that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
And like I said, completely community generated. And so I think the best thing that we could do in that situation was not try to control it and just participate as if we were any other community member, except for the fact that we can say, you know, you've been heard. I think a lot of times that's like the best thing that we can say is, you know, hey, we're paying attention. We hear you, we're commenting. And in fact, one of my daily tasks, as with so many different things, I'm sure you can all relate to this, but you know, we all have to wear so many hats in this position, that there's like certain things you want to make sure you touch every day, because if you don't make a point of it, it just won't happen. And so the Facebook groups for me is one of those things where like every day I want to like something, I want to share something, I want to comment on something, just have a touch point in all of those major groups and make sure that people know that they're being heard and that they know that we're listening, basically. So,
Marie, what about you at Torque?
Yeah, you know, so we've really, you know, tried to engage a lot more with our, you know, our followers on Twitter, our, you know, Facebook followers and all of that stuff. And, you know, we've been doing that through, you know, different forms of content that, you know, helps us reach a different audience and helps us actually engage with our readers in a new way. So, you know, we've been doing Doc's news drops, his cute little minute videos, and
my favorite are the cartoons, just for I want to put that on the record.
Yeah, well, so it's funny that, you know, so that came from like a WordCamp. I don't even remember who I was talking to, and they're like, you guys should do tunes. Like, it would be the best thing if you did them on, like, you know, current happenings in the space. So, you know, we have Doc. I don't know if you know, any of you have met him, but he's such a character, and yeah, he's
what
great.
I expected.
So, no,
I haven't met him, but I can imagine.
Yeah, so he's a professional yo-yo or all of this, you know, amazing ironic things. And so he took that on, and, you know, it was just a fun way for us to engage in the community in different ways besides written content. You know, and besides that, we have, you know, like our newsletter and, you know, things of that nature.
Nice.
Oh, I forgot to mention started our podcast. Very purpose. I don't know why that. It's only the thing that I do every week. But yeah, so our Divi Nation podcast was sort of, in fact, a response to the enthusiasm we were seeing on Facebook. Is, you know, we thought if there are enough people that can create these groups around something that we're not even creating, you know, regular community content about, then maybe we should do that. And so that kind of started us down that path. And so we've done the Divi Nation podcast, and we're starting to do more Divi specific stuff all over the place, because it's really proven to be quite essential to the growth of our community. So
nice. One more question I want to go through each person on. What's a very challenging choice you've made editorially, or an article that you wrote recently that you're still kind of struggling with or chewing on in one way or another? Like, what's like something you're like, oh, I wish that would have went differently, or maybe, you know, if Jeff was here, I'm sure we actually, I forgot to mention this. Jeff Chandler was going to be on with us as well. He couldn't make it today, but if he was here, he probably would talk about the comment section of WP Tavern. But what are some things that you guys have really struggled with recently? Let's start with Nathan.
Well, I mean, this had a very, very good ending, and it's not exactly recently, but we just finished up a series called the Divi 100 series, and this was 100 days in a row of content specifically about our flagship product, Divi, ending in the launch of the newest version, Divi 3.0. And so before we decided to do this series, you know, we were talking about it, sort of behind the scenes, deciding whether or not it was a good idea. And I was very hesitant at first because, you know, 100 days is a third of our year, and our lifeblood is SEO. I mean, our lifeblood as a blog long-term, and it's a lot of where we get new customers, is people are searching, they're searching for search terms, general WordPress search terms a lot of times, and then they find us, and then they find Divi, and then they become our customer. So to lose a third of a year of our marketing to new customers to focus on existing customers, I was just hesitant. I didn't know if it would work or not. So I ran numbers, and we just talked about it a lot. Eventually, I was on board, but that didn't really matter because Nick had already made up his mind. So we were doing it anyway, but I just, that was something that was very nerve-wracking for me to go into, because ultimately I knew that the long-term performance of the blog fell on me. I had no doubt that our users would love the series, but what the long-term consequences of, I wasn't sure until I was able to sort of comfort myself with some of the numbers that I was seeing, both in search term or search volume for Divi itself, the Divi brand, and for the long-term performance of our existing Divi-specific content. So we did this series, and it completely blew away our expectations and really changed the way that we blog from here on out, because I wrote a piece about this, and we're in the process of implementing all new systems behind the scenes to make sure that we can continue on in this direction. So we're essentially we're doubling our output. We're splitting our blog essentially in two. I mean, it's going to be the same blog still, but like we have two content paths now. We have general WordPress and web design and Divi specific. And the goal is to have every day there's a WordPress and web design general post, and every day there's a Divi video and Divi blog post. So it's a huge increase in output, but it's also allowing us to really put to use everything we learned over this big 100-day experiment, where, the biggest takeaway, which was something we knew, but we didn't quite know to what extent it could transform what we were doing. And the key takeaway that I'm talking about is the fact that, like when you write for your community, that community grows because of their enthusiasm, not just because of your brilliance. So it's like you don't have to worry about like the clever marketing so much as like just making your base really happy. And then if they're happy, they're going to talk about it, they're going to share it, they're going to be your fan, your evangelist. And we've saw enormous growth. I mean, like sorry, I'll wrap this up in a second because I don't want to dominate this portion. I don't want to take too much time, but I just can't express, how important that takeaway was for us, because we set 3 all-time monthly traffic records in 3 months, and we're able to double our biggest launch day of all time, which is unreal because we've had some very successful launch days in the past, and it was all just because we decided to really focus on our community and our customers and making content that they were fanatic about. And that was the big change that we saw. So now we realize it's worth it to invest heavily in making sure that we're not just bringing more people in, but we're focusing really, really hard on community loyalty and happiness. So
nice. Those are really great takeaways. Nice. Marie, what about you? What's something you've done recently that you're still chewing on?
So this is kind of it's a funny one. So we recently did a piece on WordPress versus Medium, and just kind of how the two platforms stack up against one another. And, I started out writing this piece confident that I could do it in an unbiased way. And it was really difficult for me. I feel like, we all love WordPress so much. So, and Medium does like outshine WordPress in some ways. So, I found I couldn't write it, so I just outsourced it. And got a more objective one. So that's my biggest challenge lately. Nice.
Brian, what about you?
There's everything that you write about pretty much you're talking, or for me, I'm typically talking about someone else, an individual or a small company, typically sometimes larger companies, but especially with small companies, you really have to manage that critique because it's a human being, and you want to be able to offer feedback and your true thoughts on something without being so harsh. A lot of times too, where that comes out might be when there's like acquisitions or something, and you may know information that doesn't necessarily improve the piece of content for the broader community, but it does expose either someone or someone within the organization if you overshare or share things that they don't know. That's come up a number of times. And just balancing what you put out there versus what you know has been something that I've really tried to be careful with, because there's this story right here that I'm writing about, and sure, I want to write about everything that I know because that's best for my readers. But there's a human being on the other end of that line, and there may be repercussions for them if that information was public. And I've been asked before to not share certain elements, and if they give me a good enough reason, then I'm willing to reconsider that. Plus, anytime you have a scenario like that, the story you're writing right now is probably not the last story that you're writing. So if you can hold something back, if it doesn't affect the story itself, like if that data, that information, if it's not overall helping inform the greater story, it's just an antidote, then holding it back could then help you get a future story or something. And just balancing those types of editorial decisions is always a challenge. And each one's different, and I always have to be careful about how I juggle those things.
Yeah, nice. So I want to wrap up with just one question. This is just open-ended. Anybody jump in. Nobody be too much of a bully kind of question. But basically, just open-ended question. What would you say is the biggest problem in the WordPress-focused publishing today? When you look at the space, when you look at the kinds of articles that are being written all the time, when you look in general at where they're coming from or what's happening, what is the biggest problem right now in the WordPress publishing? Go.
I'll take this one. Sure. For me, and just because I blogged, I was on the other end of this conversation. I was a blogger myself for many years before becoming an editor, and I think the thing that causes the most discrepancy in quality and in I guess the values of the community being honored is insufficient or mismatched economic incentives for everyone in the chain. So if you're talking about what makes great WordPress focused content, it's probably things that align themselves with the values of WordPress and then under that, the values of the individual companies and publications. And I guarantee that almost every publication represented here and that you know of, I mean, one of their highest goals is quality, but the incentive for quality from a freelance writer who has got 10 deadlines in the next 2 weeks and everything's based off a word count or everything's based off of how fast they can churn it out, that's a mismatched economic incentive. Their quality is not the thing that's going to get them paid. Turning it in is going to get them paid. And the same thing goes for affiliate marketing and a whole string of other things that can result in people not putting quality first. So if you're talking about what's the biggest roadblock to quality content, I think it's economic incentives that are either completely insufficient or mismatched. And to me, the solution to that is to have more full-time salaried writers out there and treating WordPress publications as careers and not add-ons to whatever else you might be doing or a nice little thing that you do on the side. Because, when you mentioned at the beginning that certain things aren't treated with the same heft as these other publications, well, those are publications that have huge staffs and resources, and their writers are trained and they have intense editorial standards, and you can't really enforce that on someone who is writing for you and 5 other people and stuff like that. It's very hard. You can try, and we do. I mean, everybody does, but I think that really gets to the core of a lot of the issues that come up. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can echo that for sure. We're still a relatively small team. We're growing all the time, but we're fortunate that all of our content is written by us, basically. I do think that for our sakes, it does make the quality a lot higher. And we do keep looking for ways to try to outsource the content a little bit, just because we're all busy. None of us are full-time content marketers completely. and so it's hard to get out stuff when we're all doing other things. And so I think that's the tension there, is that you do have to have, in order to produce the kind of like when you say you're going to do 2 articles every single day, I'm just like, oh my gosh, like that would never happen on our end. Our goal right now is 4 a week, which is really aggressive for us, and we're happy that so far we've been able to do that. But it's tough. Yeah. Who else? What's the problems out there?
I think 2 things. One is promotion and self-promotion. People will promote things for the purpose of affiliate sales or something like that, where they're just trying to get people to click on it and buy it. And self-promotion would be people not sharing enough general resources, but just all they do is blog about their own things going on. I think everybody here balances that really well, which is why I'm not uncomfortable giving that critique. And then actually a bigger one that I've been annoyed by for a really long time. I understand why, but there are some really qualified people to share within the WordPress community, people that are really, really smart and that could share their knowledge. And they oftentimes are the least likely to do so. And I think if people who mostly learned by reading things that others wrote for free or shared for free, if they pay that forward to the same degree, then we'd have a lot more quality, really high quality information. And it really bothers me when sometimes those same people, these are oftentimes like developers or whatever, sometimes those same people are then the ones that complain about bad code that's out there that they see or whatever. So if the people that were really good at what they do were sharing more of their knowledge for free in the same way that they learned it, then I think that the WordPress community would benefit greatly from that.
Yep, that's a good one. I agree.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think there's definitely an inclusivity problem, or a lack of inclusivity, I guess. There are, like, even if you go to like a WordCamp or something, you see, there's so many, people who are new to the community and want to learn more and stuff. But oftentimes, like, the folks that hold all of the knowledge, or at least a lot of the knowledge, are, they're not communicating it to them. And so I definitely agree with you, in that regard to the inclusivity. It's a huge issue.
Cool. Well, guys, I really appreciate your time and everything you've been able to share with us today. There's a lot in here that to chew on, that I'm definitely going to be taking back to our team and talking with them about some of these ideas and some of these concepts that we talked about today. And I definitely will be paying a lot closer attention to all of your blogs. Make sure you actually are doing what you're saying.
Can I make an addendum to my last statement? I don't want to come off as hard on freelancers. I did it for many years. So I want to make sure that my last point is not, freelance writers are no good. In fact, we depend heavily on our freelancers and they do an excellent job. But I think it's impossible, as someone who's been there, to dedicate yourself to the kind of quality that you probably personally want to produce when you have to split your attention between so many different things, and one publication, you can't go as deep on a certain topic or with a certain publication as you would want to, because that's just simply not your highest priority. I can speak from experience in saying that I think the quality that I can personally produce went up dramatically when I stopped having to do that for a bunch of other people and had one area where my needs were taken care of financially, and my stability was taken care of, and I just got to focus on content. So not a knock against freelancers, but more just a sort of, this is an unavoidable conflict that happens when you have this system in place. So,
and that problem's not unique to WordPress either. It's a problem with writing in general.
Yeah. No, I think it's a good point. I mean, you're not wrong in any way. So, you definitely don't have to back away from it. I think maybe the question is more of how publications, or like all of you guys, can actually incentivize quality better. Sometimes, like, I get the feeling that sometimes from an editorial perspective, sometimes they're trying to fill the queue so quickly that maybe they're getting articles that are just like, oh, that's 750 words. Let's push it. And whereas, being able to let folks go who just aren't getting the quality of writing up there, or just rejecting articles. I don't know if that happens enough, or if it should happen more. I'm not sure, but sometimes from the outside looking in, it feels like that sometimes. Cool. Any other last thoughts, comments?
Thanks for putting this on.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. This was great.
Thank you guys all for being here. I really appreciate it. And thanks everybody for watching. Thanks so much. Bye.